I'd like to share my harrowing experience, one that still makes my heart race every time I think about it. My name is Arthur, and this story took place during a seemingly ordinary evening, amidst the hustle and bustle of rush hour at my local gym, the Fitness X. I've always been the kind of guy who avoids physical conflicts, despite my good physique. I went to the gym to keep in shape, not to engage in any sort of altercation. On this particular day, I was at the gym at 5 p.m., just like any other day. The gym was as crowded as usual, but I didn't mind because I had everything I needed with me. My beloved iPhone, a towel, a water bottle, and my house keys. So that day, I didn't have to go to the locker room. After an exhausting leg workout, I decided it was time to call it a day and head back home. I left the gym, got into my car, and drove back to my place. Everything was going according to plan until the moment I reached my front door and realized something was wrong. I didn't have my keys. Panic began to creep in as I frantically searched my pockets and every corner of my car, but the keys were nowhere to be found. I contemplated going down to the street to check if I'd dropped them, but the thought of navigating the chaotic rush hour traffic made me reconsider. Instead, I made a quick decision and decided to visit my mother, who lived next door. She had a spare key, and I thought it would be a temporary solution until I could retrieve my own. My mother handed me the key and said with a harsh voice, "Go search for the keys today. It's better safe than sorry." I assured her that I must have left them in the car and that there was no need to worry. Little did I know that this seemingly simple mistake would lead to one of the most terrifying experiences of my life. Hours passed, and the night grew darker and quieter. I had every intention of waking up the next morning and retrieving my keys from the car, but I never got the chance. In the dead of night, I awoke to a series of strange, unsettling noises coming from the depths of my house, almost like the eerie echo of footsteps echoing through the hallways. At first, I tried to convince myself that it was just my imagination playing tricks on me, but the dread in my gut told me otherwise, as I remember I had lost the keys. Summoning my courage, I tiptoed out of my bedroom and made my way down the hallway. My heart raced and my hands were trembling. When I reached the living room, the sight that met my eyes was enough to freeze the blood in my veins. The front door was wide open. Fear coursed through me, and I knew I had to act fast. I dashed outside and attempted to dial 911, but the calls went unanswered. I tried again, and still, there was nothing but silence. It was only on my fourth attempt that a woman finally answered. I explained my situation in frantic words, and she assured me that the police were on their way. For the next agonizing 10 minutes, I stood there, adrenaline pumping, my eyes darting around in the dark, searching for any sign of movement or danger. Finally, the distant wail of sirens filled the night air, and the police arrived. They entered my house cautiously, their flashlights cutting through the inky blackness of the rooms. What they found chilled me to the bone. A 20-year-old, tall and skinny guy named Alex, someone I'd seen countless times at Fitness X. He used to be friendly to me, and I never would have suspected him of doing what he did. I remember that night vividly. It was one day before I turned 20 years old, an important mark in a girl's life. That day was a particularly long and grueling shift at work, and by the time I finally finished, the clock on the wall showed 3:30 a.m. Exhausted, I headed to 24-Hour Fitness, a gym in my town that was open 24/7, determined to squeeze in a quick workout before heading home. The gym was practically empty at that hour, with only one employee at the reception desk. There was no direct view of the main gym area from there, which should have been my first red flag. As I made my way to the treadmill, I noticed a man in his early 30s on the other side of the gym. He was alone, wearing a hooded sweatshirt that concealed most of his face. At first, I didn't think much of it. After all, I was there to work out, not socialize. But as time passed, I couldn't shake the feeling that his gaze was fixed on me. I tried to ignore it, focusing on my workout, but his unwavering stare made me increasingly uncomfortable. Minutes turned into what felt like hours, and his stares became more frequent, more intense. Every time I glanced over, his eyes were locked onto me. My heart began to race, and a creeping unease washed over me. I decided it was time to leave, grabbed my bag, and headed for the exit. Once outside, I breathed a sigh of relief, thinking I'd escaped the uncomfortable situation. I got into my car, started the engine, and began my journey home. The streets were dark and quiet, and my exhaustion weighed heavily on me. But as I glanced in the rearview mirror, I noticed something unsettling. A car had pulled out of the gym parking lot behind me, and it was following my every move. Panic set in. I couldn't see who was inside the car, but I knew they were tracking me. My mind raced, and my hands trembled on the steering wheel. I turned left. They turned left. I turned right. They followed suit. It was clear they were mirroring my every move, and the fear that had gripped me at the gym returned with a vengeance. My heart pounded in my chest as I sped up, desperately trying to shake my pursuer. I contemplated calling the police, but the fear of not making it home in time paralyzed me. My only focus was on reaching the safety of my own driveway. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I turned onto my street. Relief washed over me as I approached my house, but that relief turned to dread when I realized that the car was still right behind me. They pulled up and parked right in front of my driveway, blocking my path. Tears welled up in my eyes as I fumbled to dial my father's number. He answered on the first ring, and I blurted out the situation, my voice trembling with fear. As my father rushed out of the house, the car in front of me suddenly revved its engine and peeled away, disappearing into the night. It was a long and grueling day at the gym as an instructor. I had just finished my kickboxing workout and was ready to call it a night. The gym was practically empty, except for one other guy at the far end, a middle-aged man who seemed deeply engrossed in his own workout. I didn't pay much attention to him. I was too focused on finishing up my routine. The time was nearing midnight when I decided to head to the electrical panel room to shut off the lights and lock up for the night. As a personal trainer, I often stayed late to clean up and prepare for the next day. It was a routine I had grown accustomed to. I made my way to the panel room, and as I reached for the light switch, the room plunged into darkness. My heart raced, but I figured it was just a blown fuse. I fumbled for my flashlight and clicked it on. It cast eerie, uneven shadows on the walls as I made my way to the electrical panel. As I opened the panel, I immediately noticed something was wrong. The cables had been cut, cleanly and deliberately. My flashlight beam fell on an empty water bottle left on the floor beside the panel. It was a strange and unsettling sight, but I tried to convince myself that it was just a prank or a bizarre coincidence. I decided to go back to the main gym area and find the guy who had been training. "Hey!" I called out into the darkness, my voice echoing through the cavernous space. "Is everything okay?" Silence. No response. I took a few cautious steps forward, my flashlight trembling in my hand. "Hey man, did you see anyone messing with the electrical panel?" I called out again. Still nothing. The gym felt like a void, a vacuum of sound and light. My unease deepened. I started walking towards the man's last known location, my senses on high alert. That's when I heard it. Fast, heavy footsteps coming up from behind me. I spun around, the flashlight beam catching the silhouette of the man charging at me, wielding a 20-kilo barbell like a weapon. Instinct took over as adrenaline surged through my body. I dodged to the side, narrowly avoiding a potentially lethal blow. With a burst of strength and fear, I lunged forward and managed to grab the man's arm, wresting the makeshift weapon from his grasp. He struggled and thrashed, but I held on. In a panic, I dialed 911 with my free hand, my voice trembling as I reported the situation to the operator. The gym was filled with a cacophony of grunts, yells, and the relentless sound of sirens in the distance. When the police arrived, they quickly apprehended the man and took him into custody. As they led him away, he wore a twisted smile and mumbled incoherently. I never did find out what had driven him to attack me that night, but the chilling encounter left me with an unsettling feeling that lingers to this day.